everyone, welcome to another episode of the Baptize Machine. The Wall Street Bitch may or may not be joining me later today. A couple announcements is that we will be interviewing both the Shaman and Peter Laughing separately in the coming days, so get ready for those episodes. Today we have a special Colorado politic-based episode with Valdamar Archuleta. Valdemar is a candidate for Colorado's first congressional district, which is Denver. He's a Denver native, and his tagline is, he's tired of watching our neighborhoods suffer because of the failings of D.C. I'm going to go ahead and just share his Twitter, his campaign video real quick, so we can get an idea of what he's about before he comes on for this interview. You can find him on Twitter at Archuleta for Colorado. His website is archuletaforcolorado.com. I think we got connected with him through Casper, actually. Casper stalked him, the love guru. And yeah, let's just watch his ad and see what it's like.
If the place you called home was unraveling before your eyes, would you do something to save it? Denver's my home. I was born and raised here, but it's not the same city I grew up in. Yet it's a reflection of where our country is right now. Homelessness has increased by 46% in Denver in 1 year. Nearly 1 in 10 adults in Colorado have had a family member die of a drug overdose. The majority of that from fentanyl. Colorado's rising crime rate ranks 4th in the nation. Reports of violent crime in Denver have almost doubled in a decade. We're ultimately losing out on our own future. Because on top of all this, let's face it, it's getting really expensive to live here. Inflation is making basic things really expensive. Coloradans need $15,000 more just to live like they did in 2021. Prices are rising at the fastest rate they have in decades. Our elected leaders are asleep at the wheel. Congress hasn't passed a balanced budget since 1998, and we haven't had a federal surplus since 2001. We are partly at fault. Our elected officials count on the fact that we'll settle for the status quo and won't hold them accountable. Who's to blame them? In 2022, 98% of congressmen were reelected, despite 85% of Americans believing the country was headed in the wrong direction. This has to change. My name is Valdamar Archuleta. I don't have a fancy degree, I'm not a millionaire, and I've never been elected to political office. I'm just a guy from Denver who's tired of watching our country fall short and seeing the consequences in our neighborhood. And that's why I'm running to represent Colorado's first congressional district. Let's do something different in Washington.
Alright, so that's a little bit about Archuleta, who we're going to have on very soon here.
City and urban communities, and just show people that there is a different side of the conversation. Because I have found that throughout my life, when I talk to people, when we discuss policies and issues, like 95% of the time, even in like around here, people agree with me. It's when you mention the word Republican or conservative that they kind of get thrown off, because I think that there's a PR problem those groups are having nowadays. And so, but I'd like to just reach out and talk to people in the community about things, and maybe let them hear a different side of the conversation they haven't heard before.
Yeah, that's great. I also live in Northwest Denver, so that's pretty cool. Do you know why they approached you a couple years ago, like you said, to ask you to run? Like what drew them to you, the Colorado GOP?
Yeah, so my name is Valdamar Archuleta. I was born and raised here in Denver, Colorado. And I feel like I'm just a typical kind of guy. I live here on the west side of Denver, have 2 dogs, a cat. I work at the airport, and I never thought I would be running for office of any kind, much less for Congress. And this kind of came about because of 2 years ago, the Colorado GOP had asked me to run. And I said no. I was like, heck no, I ain't doing that. That's crazy. But since then, it kind of started a bunch of conversations with people around the city and people within the party as to how a run here in Denver, which is Colorado Congressional District 1, is pretty much all Denver County. So if your
Okay.
address says Denver at the end, you're in Congressional District 1.
And this is at the federal level, right?
It is at the federal
Yeah.
level.
Okay.
And so I forgot what I was about to say. But anyway, like it just seeing some of the benefits that could come from that. And one that, at least for me, that sticks out is just being somebody who was born and raised in Denver in an urban environment. I've lived most of my life in cities and different urban communities. I feel like, that we kind of have like two options. One group of politicians comes to the community, tells us all that we're oppressed and we're victims and we need to support them and give them power because they'll take care of us. And so we do vote for them. And then nothing happens. The other group of politicians just feels they're never going to win us over, so they don't even talk to us. So we end up without, at least a lot of people in urban communities feel like they don't have options. So I would like to just bring a different voice to, I'm not completely sure. I mean, they didn't give me a reason, so I can only speculate. I'm the president of the Log Cabin Republicans of Colorado, which is the LGBT side of the Republican Party.
Yeah.
And so I have been pretty active with that and going out and speaking at places and on different things. And so in CD1, it's kind of hard to find a lot of active Republicans in the city of Denver. And so I was one of them. So at the time, it was like no one was running. Like they didn't have a candidate, so they really just needed someone to put their name on the ballot.
Gotcha.
The campaign, I don't even know if it would have been. It would almost been non-existent.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what kind of unique perspectives do you think you bring to the table as a conservative gay Hispanic candidate?
Well, with that, I mean, I think, like I said, growing up in the city, I went to Denver public schools. I lived, right in the community here. I think that maybe my viewpoint of the world is a little bit different than what people typically think a Republican lifestyle or viewpoint is. And I personally feel like it's just almost those. I'm really not into identity politics. I don't like.
That question was all about identity politics.
No, and that's fine because I think it needs to be talked about and it needs to be addressed.
Sure.
So it was a good question. I'm not downing your question. I think we do. It is something that needs to be talked about. But I think that like for instance, say the fact that I'm a gay man. I had previously been involved in the LGBT community. I was on the board of directors for the Colorado Springs Pride organization, so I've worked a lot with that community.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of odd that people would assume that because I'm physically attracted to men, that would have a bearing over how I view like the economy and and security of our nation and how like it doesn't really tie in some ways.
It's not connected really at all.
Same thing with other things. I think they kind of group people in these categories. And honestly, when I was working with the Pride Center, I voted more towards I voted for Democrats. I voted for a lot of libertarians because I just kind of was told like these people are good, those people are bad. I didn't question it. I just like, all right, I have no reason to not trust you and went along with it. But then, like when you talk to a lot of the individuals within these communities, whether it's the Latino community, when I speak to them, they are very conservative in their lifestyle. They're all about family, their faith, God. They want to work hard and be successful. So I do think that kind of that stereotype needs to be broken, and people need to see that you can be a Republican and be gay and brown.
Yeah, for sure. So you would be running against Diane Degette. How do you say her name?
Degette.
Degette. So what?
Have you? Are you from Denver?
No, I actually recently moved from
Okay.
Boulder, which there's barely any Republicans there. Like they're
Yeah,
very hard to
Boulder's
find in
kind of the
Boulder.
same
Yeah,
thing. No, I
but
was
it's
gonna
got
say like that kind of
yeah.
shows something that she's been in Congress for 30 years and people don't even know how to pronounce her name.
Yeah, so yeah, Diane Degette. What do you think? How do you think you would represent Denver differently than her on a national level?
Well, like you said, she's been there for 30 years, and I'm not going to spend this campaign trashing her personally. I don't have
Yeah.
anything against her personally, but I
Hmm.
do think we have gotten to a point in our nation where you look at, and this happens on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, this
You
is like
look
why
at
people
people in,
are upset with the presidential election. They don't want either candidate really. So
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, like we need to send another 80-year-old to be our president? That's kind of our only option right now on either side.
yeah.
But even like with like what happened with Diane Feinstein, what
That's
was
what
its name?
happened to
McConnell, like having little mini strokes practically in front of cameras where he just blanked out and they had to like walk him off. Like, um, you're the Washington's not supposed to be a retirement home, and you're not supposed to like it's being a politician isn't supposed to be a career path.
Yeah, these people
Our
need to
house,
they need to go to the beach and hang out with their grandkids, not be in
yes, it's
Washington.
time
Yeah,
to retire. Going to Washington and representing your community was supposed to be like something you did. You went there for a few years, you served your community, and you came back. And in that precedent was kind of set. Even like you go back to like George Washington, he could have been president for as long as he wanted to be, but after 2 terms, he was like, "All right, that's enough." And that precedent was kind of set that you go there, you do your thing, you go home. And recently, like it has become a thing where we have people in Congress, again, on both sides of the aisle, who've just been there for way too long. And I think after you're there, living in Washington for 30 years, I think you lose touch with the community you came from. And someone asked me that the other day, like, how do I know that you will not become, referring to me, a, career politician or lose
lifelong
touch?
politician. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm like, well, I probably would if I were there for 30 years. So don't send me there for 30 years. At some
that's
point,
fair.
you need to like stop voting for me, or we really do need to set up some kind of term limits. And we have it for the president, and really no one disagrees with that. I think the
Yeah,
country unanimously understands 2 terms is enough. Do your thing, go back home. And I don't see why we don't feel that's the same for the Senate or for the Congress or the House at least.
mhm. So when will this election actually take place? Sorry, I'm a little out of touch with it right now.
Well, we kind of have a unique situation, myself and Degette, because right now it's primary season, so most of these elections you'll see people are campaigning for a primary and that they're trying to win their party's
Yes.
nomination
Yep.
to be on the general election. Well, I don't have anyone running against me on the Republican side, and
Oh,
Degette
that's
does not
great.
have anyone running against her on the Democrat side. So both of us don't have primaries, so we can really kind of focus on the general election right now, which will be in November.
Gotcha.
Now,
Are
I
there
was gonna
any
say
third
I do have
parties
to.
you're concerned
I'm sorry,
about,
what?
or I said, are there any third parties you're concerned about?
No, there is one woman. I think her name is Dom Waters, and
Yeah.
she's running. I forget. It's one of the third parties. I'm thinking like the Unity Party, but maybe that's not right. I don't
Okay.
know. But she had
Gotcha.
ran last round as a Democrat against Degette, and she didn't make it to the primary. I don't know why. For
Okay.
some reason, she dropped out of the race. So she's, as far as I know, the only third party in the race. For like on my end, I'm not. I wouldn't want to say I'm not concerned about her. I actually have never met her in person. I've spoken to her kind of via Twitter chats and that last
Mhm.
time. But I do think, like I would love to have a debate with Degette or have, some opportunities to speak so that people can hear the just so that the people of Denver deserve to hear the options that are out there. And should Dom make it to the ballot, I think she should be part of those conversations as
Yeah.
well, because I think the people of Denver also deserve to hear her voice and see what she stands for as well. But I mean, I was going to say, like, even though, like I said, we're focused on the primary or not the primary, the general election in November.
Election, yep.
I do have to, like, go through the caucus system to get the party's nomination. The caucus system here in Colorado is kind of confusing. I know a lot of people find it intimidating because
how does it work in Colorado, the caucuses?
Colorado's kind of interesting in that there are two ways to get on the ballot. You can petition onto the ballot, that is, get signatures from constituents. If you get enough, depending on what race you're running in, there's a certain number you have to get. You can submit those, and then you'll be on the primary ballot. Or you can go through the caucus system, which is basically when the community comes together. At least this is the way it was supposed to be. The community comes together, and they choose who they want to represent them in their party. So you kind of just show up, and you have someone nominate you, someone second that nomination, you accept the nomination, they vote. If you get, and depending how many people are nominated, I believe you have to get like 30% of the vote to be on the ballot. So if two people get 30%, then they're both on the ballot. If only one, then only that one goes to the ballot. Since I have no opponents, I think getting 30% will be pretty easy. I have mixed feelings about the caucus system. I do understand why people like it, viewing it as some kind of grassroots thing where people come together. I think some people think that the ballot or the petitioning on is buying your way on, because you have to pay for the petitions to be printed, and usually you have to pay for people to go out and get the signatures. But I feel like, if you do that and you get people to sign it, I think that that's just as democratic of a way of getting on as the other. And the problem with caucus is, especially like here in Denver, you have so few people show up. So there may be 50,000 Republicans in Denver, and you'll have like 200 of them show up to caucus. And so those 200 people are speaking for that entire group. I don't necessarily view that's the best thing either.
When and where will that be happening? Can the general public go to the caucus?
Well, you do need to be registered with the party, and I believe that the Democrats and the Republicans are all holding their caucus. Well, actually, I shouldn't speak for the Democrats. I'm not sure. I know that the Republicans, it's on March 7th, which is a Thursday. I think the Democrats might be the day before. I don't know. But if you go to either one of their websites, either the Denver Democrats or the Denver Republicans, they'll have the information about where you go. And they do it by what they call precinct, or usually the precincts meet together in a district. And you'll meet at that spot and you'll go through caucus. What I tell people is it does seem intimidating and it does seem confusing, but if you just show up, you will be walked through the whole process, and it's really not that hard.
Okay.
And I think I don't know. I'd assume that the Libertarians and the others do the same thing. I don't know.
Do you have any big wealthy donors backing you, or organizations or PACs or anything like that?
I do not. Right now our campaign's pretty small. The only donors we have are like $100 donors or less from people around the community.
Okay. So very grassroots so far.
It is, and most of the stuff I've been able to do myself, like the videos I've made and the social media content. Like I said, we don't have a primary, so probably after this whole primary season, at least after the state assemblies and caucuses and that, it'll probably start picking up a little bit, but we'll see. I don't really expect to have any PACs or big donors like that necessarily get behind me. But who knows what'll happen.
Yeah, you might be able to find some, though. You never know. What do you think of Lauren Boebert? She would be your colleague, possibly, if you were elected to Congress.
Lauren Boebert is an interesting lady. I like some of her viewpoints, and I like that she's a fighter. The way she goes about it, sometimes I think is a little too much. And then some of the things she says, I don't know if she's sometimes it's not just her, but I think some people like to say things for shock value just to create a
Yeah.
conversation, which is okay if you weren't the congresswoman.
Yeah, I
There's
mean,
a book.
she also jerked that guy off during Beetlejuice.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
Yeah, her personal life, I don't know.
Yeah.
I try to let politicians have their personal life um,
Mhm.
and I actually though feel like I think that she kind of screwed herself for less of a polite way of saying that, but
Yeah.
because I think she felt if she went over to CD4 she would be accepted and loved and she would win with congressional district 4. Pretty much whoever wins the Republican primary is going to win the general.
Yeah.
And so I think she thought she can go over there, run in that primary, win their nomination, and then she would win a different seat, but she'd go back to Congress, and she's not doing so well in CD4.
Yeah. She
Um,
almost lost to that Adam guy last
yeah,
election.
Adam
Yeah.
Frisch, she
Yeah.
barely, I think it was the closest race in the country. She
Yeah.
barely won. So I think she felt like she's not going to be able to beat him, so she went to 4. And that move is just not coming across well, which I don't think that's a good move either. Because what does it say about your home district, like where you live, the people you represent, that you're just running away from them and going
Yeah.
somewhere? Like I think that whole look is just really bad.
Yeah, you're not really representing your constituents.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like the people in CD4, so far have not felt like they want her to now represent them. They had a debate, and then they had something the other night. I don't know what it was, but they do what they call a straw poll, which is basically the audience that shows up. They ask them, who would you vote for based on like their presentation that night, and she has not done well in any of those
Hmm.
straw polls. So
Yeah, Lauren Boebert, I think, is kind of out of luck in this
yeah,
election.
and
That's what
honestly,
she's
if I
at.
lived in CD4, I wouldn't vote for her.
Yeah,
They
neither would
do
I.
have a lot of good candidates in that race. They probably have too many candidates in that race, but
Mhm.
with all of them, there's much better options. So I think she, like I said, I think she may have messed up. This was a strategic move that will not work out for her, and so I think her congressional career is probably going to be over.
Yeah, probably. Another kind of hot topic in especially in Denver right now is immigration with
Hmm.
a bunch of people being bussed up from Texas and then the cold coming in and there's really nowhere for a lot of these individuals. How would you address like the combination of our sanctuary city immigration status and the homelessness in Denver?
Um, yeah, I mean that's a really tough issue.
Hmm.
One, I think, well, at least going to the immigration situation, I think we need to look at the root cause going to the southern border. And
Hmm.
there's a lot of issues that come from that. One is the illegal immigration issue of people coming in, but you also have the drug trafficking problem. And if you look at the death rates with fentanyl and that across the nation, it's not good. You also have human trafficking coming across the border, both directions. That needs to be stopped. So I think one of
Yeah.
the first things that has to be done is that the laws need to be enforced, and the border needs to be secured.
Do you
And,
think
and
Denver, sorry to cut you off, do you
oh, no
think
worries.
Denver should be a sanctuary city?
I personally would not have made Denver a sanctuary city. I went to a town hall a few weeks ago, and they called it a town hall, but really it was just a bunch of elected officials, and they had little round tables
Yeah.
where you went from table to table, and they were talking about it and almost kind of defending that like sanctuary city does not mean that you come here and we'll take care of you. Sanctuary city means that they're not going to report anybody. Um,
Hmm.
and I feel like although that is true, um, what it does is incentivize people to come to Denver. And
Yeah.
I understand that people want to help other people, and you want to be kind, and you want to be, help your fellow man, and that, and I get that. And I
Yeah,
also, like, I understand from the immigrant's perspective that, if there was an opportunity to come to a country where you feel things would be better for you, I don't blame them for doing
yeah,
that
you're gonna take
either.
that.
Yeah, but you can see what's happening when they're showing up here. Are they really in a better position? Like you mentioned a few weeks ago, it was like 0 degrees and you don't have a place to stay. They're not ending up in better situations here. Like, life is not getting better for them being here. Plus the trek to get here, a lot of individuals are paying thousands and thousands of dollars to the cartels to safely be
Hmm.
brought across the Mexican border. There's also, I forget the numbers of women and girls who are being raped in that journey, people
Yeah,
who are dying. Like, it's not a good situation
yeah.
that these individuals are being put in.
I was actually on like a kind of backpack river trip in
Hmm.
Guatemala and Mexico, and I saw the first 3 days on the river when we were camping. We'd see like multiple cartel trips a day, just running immigrants in these old wooden
Yeah.
airboats from across the Guatemalan border into Mexico, and then they still have to journey all the way up here, which is pretty wild. Like who, how, what is the
Yeah, it
percentage
is.
that makes it?
Hmm.
Mhm.
It is, and so it really, I feel like it's a sad situation we're putting these individuals in. And there's a YouTube video, if you were to search bubblegum, what is it? I think it's bubblegum and immigration. Like, it's bubblegum balls. It's this guy
Yeah.
who does this whole. It's almost like a TED talk with about
Mhm.
immigration using bubblegum balls
Yeah.
to illustrate how many people in the world are living in poverty versus the very few that actually make it to, like, the United States, and how actually having people immigrate here is not helping their people back home. So the root cause of the immigration being poverty in these nations, that a lot of the people that come here, one, like, it's a very difficult trek. So you have to be
Yeah.
healthy. You have to be, usually it's younger people. And if you look at the people, the pictures, a lot of it's young men coming into the country. These would
Hmm.
be the individuals who back home would be the ones fighting to change their communities and better their communities. But instead, they're coming here. So the
Yeah.
communities they're leaving are losing people who would be the ones to fight for change there. So all the way around, like, it really doesn't help the situation on a lot of levels. And so I'm not a super religious person anymore, but I
Mm.
used to be. I grew up a Jehovah's Witness. So that's a whole
Oh, what? You didn't even
that's a
have a
whole
birth.
other story.
You didn't even have a birthday growing up then, huh?
I had no birthday.
That is so
That's why
sad,
now I'm kind of
honestly.
weird. I'm an adult and I love Halloween. I go all out for Halloween and Christmas,
Awesome.
and people are like, "You act like you're a kid." It's like, because I couldn't do this when I was a kid,
Yeah,
so
you're making up
I'm
for
making
lost
up
time,
for it
right?
now.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember this one, looking at. I don't feel like, I think some religions call it the Beatitudes or whatever, or the Jehovah's Witnesses call it the fruitage of the Spirit,
Okay.
talking about God's qualities. But there were two qualities in there that I remember. This kind of always stood out to me, was kindness and goodness. And it almost seems redundant to have goodness and kindness because they seem like they're the same thing. But if you look at it, like, you can do something that's good that doesn't come across as kind, or you can do something
Mhm.
that's kind that in the end isn't good. Kind of like, you go back to that old saying about, if you want to feed a man for one day, give him a fish, feed him for a lifetime, teach him to fish. Um, excuse me.
Yeah.
But I do think in this situation, there's a difference between doing what's good for these individuals and doing what's kind. And
Hmm.
doing what's kind is easier because you get the immediate gratification of, oh, like, we're helping them. Whereas doing what's good is better, but it's oftentimes harder. And so the incentivizing of people to make that journey to the United States, where they're ultimately not ending up better here and they're not helping the people back home, um, it's not good. And so that incentivizing has to stop as well. So first thing we need to do is secure the border, enforce the laws, They're already there. It can
Yeah.
be done right now. Um, and then second, we need to stop incentivizing people to come here. And once that's done, I mean, with the individuals who are here, the immigration system does need work. One of my volunteers is from Colombia, and him and
Uh-huh.
his family, they're here legally. They came in the
Yeah.
legal process, but they're not citizens yet. They're working towards being citizens, but
Mm-hmm.
they've already been here for like 6 years, and they're probably not going to get citizen status for
Yeah, it
like
takes a
another
lot of work.
5. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of money and paperwork. I do think that needs to be fixed so that individuals who want to come here, the path is a little easier than that. Because then you also can see how some people look at that and they're like, do I go through this long 11-year process of paperwork and paying money, or do I
Yeah.
just walk across the border?
Mm-hmm. Can you sorry, well, actually, I have one more thing on the border. Have you heard about how there's like been over like 46,000 Chinese men crossing from our southern border?
I have.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I saw. I don't know what the podcast was, but it was two Latinos
Mm-hmm.
in Los Angeles, and they were talking about how, like, everyone thinks it's all Mexicans coming across the border,
Yeah.
and that's not true. It's people from I don't know the number, but almost every country on the planet that are coming across the border, and there's a lot, yeah, from China. Um, I mean, I think it's the same wherever you come from. You still needs to be done the legal way. One of the bad things, though, is we don't know who's coming into the country. I lived in New York City on 9/11, and so I
Mm-hmm.
saw it with my own eyes. It had a huge impact on my life. Um, one thing I fear is that if you look at what happened on 9/11, it only took 19 people to do that.
Yeah.
And like I say, I think that we've now crossed the line that under Biden's administration, 8 million people that we know of have illegally entered the country.
Yeah.
And I do admit that I think the vast majority of people coming into the country are good people who just want a better life. They want to help their families. Um, I'm not saying
Yeah.
they are criminals, but if you just say like 1 out of 1,000 people who came into the country had like ill intent on what
Yeah.
they were coming here for, that would be 8,000 people of the 8
Yeah.
million who came in. And if you only say like 1 out of 10,000 people, that's still 800 people in the country who want to do the country harm. And like I said, it only took 19 people to do 9/11. So the
Yeah.
security aspect for the country does scare me. And I heard another person was talking about specifically the Chinese issue. Um, and again, I don't know. Like I would also say that the majority of them are wonderful, great people. They're
Mm-hmm.
coming here. They want to work hard.
Yeah.
They want to change things for their life, family, and the country, whatever. But if some of them are coming in and there's something goes down between like Taiwan and then the United States gets involved, do we know that these individuals where would their loyalties lie, with China or with the United States? So
Yeah.
would we end up with a faction of people within the country loyal to another country that may at the time be, um, I don't just want to say an enemy, but an adversary of the country?
Yeah. You
We
never
just
know.
we don't know, and I think it is responsibility of our federal government to make sure that we're safe. I mean, I don't want to say that like Chinese people are all going to become terrorists, or we don't want to go
Yeah.
back to doing like what happened in World War II and throw all the Chinese in internment camps the way they did Japanese people. That is not what I'm saying, but we do need to know who's entering the country.
For sure. That now I kind of want to transition. I wanted to talk about the head of the GO Colorado, Dave Williams. I'd love to have him on because I have some hard questions for this guy actually. But he seems
You
like
should.
he seems like a pretty controversial figure, like kind of demonizing the LGBTQ community and really like pushing them
Mhm.
away from the Republican Party. And then also, I saw recently that he criticized the Dominion voting machines in 2020, and now he says he wants to use
Yeah.
them in Colorado. So, yeah, I don't know if you could speak to any of that.
Oh no, I will. I don't know. Dave super well, so I can't speak to everything. But back in June, he did put out an email that I think I forget the way he said it. Something about he called pride demonic or something like that. So I had a conversation with him, and we had a long conversation. We talked for like an hour about it. And to me, I don't know. One thing, here's what I think, kind of going back a little backstory in this sense. When Donald Trump won election in 2016, he kind of came out, he was very to the point. He was kind of harsh and brash in how he talked, and it worked. He got elected because even though he was saying things that were harsh and I can't think of a better way to say this, but like just he came across rude and this bull in the china shop type person. But what he was saying touched people because a lot of what he was saying was actually true. It worked for him at that time because he's Donald Trump and that's kind of just who he's always been. I think that there are some people in the Republican Party who want to emulate that tactic. And they saw that it worked for him, so like, maybe I should do that. And so I think this letter was almost like that, where it was very over the top. It did not come across well. Like I told Dave, there are aspects like the actual meat of the letter, the things he was trying to say. I actually agree with most of it, but the method in which he delivered it was not welcoming. It was not something that's going to attract people to listen to your message. You're not winning people over. You're not making a good argument. You're actually doing the opposite. You're pushing people away because they're not going to look at the actual message that you have, the actual policy and issues message. All they're going to see is that you're mean and you're calling pride evil, and they're going to take that to mean you're calling all gay people evil. And it came across very bad. And so I told him, I don't like that. I don't like the way it was delivered. If you want to give this message to the public, talk to me. And, because I work with this community, I can help you come up with a better way to message these things to the public so that you're actually informing them of the issue and explaining to them why this way is better than the other way instead of just insulting people. He told me that he got good feedback from the letter and that people liked it, which I feel like that's probably just the people who already like you. Those are not the people we need to win over. Those are not the people we need to talk to. So him and I just have a difference, I guess, of opinion on how we should message things to the public. Since then, he did come and speak to the Log Cabin Republicans.
Oh, that's good.
So he came and talked to us because at the end he did say, well, what can I tell the community to help them? I was like, well, you should just come talk to them yourself. And so he did. So I don't think he would be opposed to speaking to you on your podcast. Yeah. He's done lots of podcasts and interviews. Of course, right now he's campaigning in CD5, which is like Colorado Springs. So I don't know if like your podcast, does it go everywhere or?
Yeah, we're on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, all of it. Do you know if he's on Twitter? Do you know if he's on Twitter?
He is on Twitter, but I don't see him being super active on Twitter.
Interesting.
The best way to contact him would probably just to email him at his Colorado GOP email.
Cool.
But yeah, I've seen him. One thing I will say about him is he does usually talk to people. Like he doesn't seem the type who's afraid to talk to people. So I don't know.
That's good. Cool. Good to know. Thank you. So what do you do at the airport? If you are elected, do you think you would have to give that job?
I would have to give the job up because I couldn't just take months off at a time, as most people can't with their jobs. I'm a massage therapist, so I work at a shop there. I've been a massage therapist for 15 years now, I used to have my own office and shop, and then like I said, I'm originally from Denver. I moved away for a while. I lived in New York City, moved back,
Yeah.
ended up down in Colorado Springs. When I moved back to Denver, I moved the business up here, and I got an office on 6th and Washington. And while I was building up clientele, I started working at the airport as well. And then after a while, I was like, you know what? It's just easier to work for someone else.
Yeah.
I don't have to deal with taxes and paperwork and cleaning and working and marketing to get clients. And it's like so now I just work at the airport, and I've been there for about 7 years,
Great.
maybe 8 years now.
What hobbies do you have? I see you're an Avs fan, so you're into sports, or
I know you got my shirt.
yeah.
I'm not a huge sports guy. I am an Avs fan though.
Mm-hmm.
I used to. I don't know. This is kind of going way back. What was it? The Denver Grizzlies way back before the Avs came. We used to go to Grizzly games all the time. They were like a minor league team, and then the Avs
Okay.
came, and I've gone to less games. But it got me into hockey, and so I was happy that I was excited we had a major league team.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like hockey. As far as hobbies, I'm a photographer. I like photography.
Okay.
I've gotten into photography and video stuff during high school. Um, this was back. I graduated in '97, so I'm kind of an old
Yep.
man.
Yep.
I was
Still
really
younger
into
than most
film.
politicians.
I know this is
Yeah.
like being a politician is the one field where I can be like the young guy in the room.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I got into photography, and I was really into film photography. I fought digital for a long time. And then I finally was like, all right, I caved. 1 year I just used my whole tax refund to just go buy a really good high quality digital camera, and I love my digital cameras now. So that's kind of a hobby. I also like paddleboarding in the summertime when I can get out to a lake or something and just go escape the world. Because I feel like it's kind of like a sport, but it's a very easy, lazy sport, so it fits me perfectly.
Nice.
Just float out on a lake on a board.
Yeah, that's fun. Great. So going back to kind of politics and everything, are there any what maybe mainstream media would consider a conspiracy theory that you believe in right now? Or if you just have a favorite conspiracy
A
theory
favorite
too, that's not
conspiracy
even
theory.
political. Yeah.
I don't know. When it comes to conspiracy theories, like I question everything, probably
Yeah.
almost too much. I used to work at a haunted house down in Colorado Springs. It was like
Okay.
during Halloween, and I was their photographer / actor. But anyway, there was a paranormal investigation group that came through, and they needed a photographer, so I went with them on a few of these hunts. But I told them, like, I don't. For me to believe in a ghost, the ghost must appear right before me and tell me I am a ghost, and then I probably would still kind of question it. Was that real,
Okay.
or did I see something else? I'm very skeptical. But I will say before COVID, I had heard a lot of conspiracy theories that now at this point they're real. Like they're not even questioned anymore. For instance, a lot of the stuff around the World Economic Forum that they pretty much just come out and say that they're trying to create a global government and currency and take property away from us. Like that used to be something that's like, I don't know about that. You say that's what they want to do, but is that really what they want to do? And now they just outrightly say it. So I don't know. I heard your podcast a while back with the American Shaman.
Yeah. He's coming
Whoever
back on
did his
Friday, actually.
website, he has like the most beautiful website I've ever seen, and I'm very jealous of that. So,
I'll
and
ask
I
him when we have
heard,
him on Friday who did his website.
yeah,
I
who
know
did?
he's
Send them
running
to
with.
me. I
Oh,
need that website.
He's running
Oh, go ahead.
without any. He's running without any donations, which should be interesting. I know that's probably pretty
It is, and
challenging.
I actually I like his platform. Like if you go to his website, there's these cards that pop up and they show like the things he stands for, and I think
Yeah.
those are great things. It will be interesting. Plus, he's running as a third party or independent, so that's kind of rough. We'll see what happens. Like one thing, he has name recognition.
Yeah, that's true.
So
He's like world famous. So.
yeah, they gave him a platform, and he's very articulate and well spoken, and he's able to say his things. But I know, like, I don't know. Going back to your question, I'm kind of getting off subject there. The
Yeah, no
conspiracy
worries.
theories. I can't think of any right now. One, I guess, I don't even know if this is a conspiracy theory anymore either, because just the fact that it seems like our politicians want to keep us divided.
Yeah.
And they're doing it intentionally. Like, because you want to believe that your elected officials would not purposely hurt people. Because I see that that's such a hurtful thing to communities, especially the communities they supposedly are helping. Like you look at the minority communities, this whole like how everything now in the last several years has become hyper focused on race.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't feel like it was like that before. That they're doing that because they want to divide people.
Yeah.
And like I said, a long time I just was like, I don't want to believe that because I don't want to think that they really, and not just the politicians, but even companies and the media. I'm like, why are they wanting to hurt us like that? But I don't really see any other reason for it. And that's one thing I really like really irritates me is that
the why behind that, right? Why do they want to
yeah,
hurt
like
us or
why do you
divide
want us to be focused on race all the time?
us?
Like I was recently through Twitter connected with several Native American organizations that are lean more conservative. This especially through this past weekend with the Super Bowl. I don't know if you remember that little boy who painted his face and had the headdress on, and some media outlet called him, said that he was like in blackface because they took
Oh
a picture
yeah,
from the
yeah,
side, just because he had black and red on his face. They
yeah.
just
It's
showed
like a
the
little
black side
kid
of his face.
playing. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a little kid. Well, a group of Native Americans worked to raise money to send him to the Super Bowl. And so I was kind of chatting with them. Like, so we kind of, I've never met him in person, and I'm not part of that. Although I thought what they did was great, and I
Yeah.
applaud that they did that. But like I'm talking with them. Is like, how come people? Because there were some people who are mad about the name the Chiefs. I'm
Yeah,
like,
I remember that.
why are we upset about that? But nobody's upset about like the Vikings or the
Yeah,
Celtics
yeah, or
or the
like,
49ers.
or you're an Hispanic person, so what do you think about like when the white people were like Latinx, Latinx? Because like every
I
Latino I
hate that
talk to
word.
is like, I hate that word. Like
I
anyone who's
refuse.
it's like only white people use it. I think like anyone who's actually like from Central America or whatever is like fuck that word, man.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
it's really
Yeah,
almost insulting because
I know.
the Spanish language is very gender, like gender's huge. Every
Mhm.
noun is either masculine or feminine, which
Yeah.
is something in English we don't think about. So
Yeah.
in English we can do this gender thing. I mean, we have neutral, and it's a little easier to do that. But if you were to do that to Spanish, you
Yeah.
almost
Just
have to change
butchers
the
the
entire
language.
language.
Mhm.
Um,
Totally.
and so it's really like, all right, you're saying that the Spanish language is offensive, and we have to start putting X's because to have that O is 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 somehow offensive to women or offensive to
Yeah.
non-binary, or
Yeah.
whereas like for forever we've used this language and we understand when you say Latino, you're referring to everyone.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter who you are,
Yeah, and it's not
that you're
misogynistic. It's not.
included in that. Yeah, and
Yeah.
anytime you speak with a group, because again, Spanish is a very gendered language. If it's a mixed group, you always just put the O because the O can represent everyone. And I actually know a lot of Latina ladies, because if you are just
Mhm.
talking about a woman, you'll say a Latina, who almost feel like because of that, it almost gives the feminine a special spot because it just means it's just women. Like, so if you say Latina or Latinas, it's just
Yeah.
them. Whereas like with the men, you don't have that because you could say Latinos and it could be a group of men or it can be everyone. So some of them almost feel like that's a little special thing that they have. So when you take away that ending and put an X, it is a little insulting.
Yeah, kind of offensive. Yeah, that's what
Yeah.
I thought. But I mean, I'm not, as a white dude, I'm not the one to make that decision. But yeah, that was like my
It's
hunch.
okay. I think that you, as a white man, your opinion is valid. So don't let
Thank you.
people tell you it's not.
So I know we said we were going to do about an hour. We're approaching it, but I did have a few more questions. I was hoping we
Yeah.
could give you any final last words. But I was curious, with the growing, especially in Colorado, I believe we just legalized psilocybin mushrooms. I think ibogaine and MDMA maybe next on the
Hmm.
schedule. So, and ketamine has been legal. So I was curious, typically Republicans are more anti-drug, although I view this as kind of an
Hmm.
anti-pharmaceutical issue. But uh,
Yeah.
what do you think of the medical psychedelics in Colorado and the decriminalization and legalization of psychedelics for medical use?
Yeah. Well, that's something I want to look into a little more before I have a full on like this is my policy.
That's fair.
Um, I'm not against it though. Like I actually think there's a lot of benefits that can come from
Mm-hmm.
um I forget the chemical words you just said them, but because I don't
Yeah,
want to
no
call them
worries.
all
Yeah.
psychedelics, but those
So you can just,
chemicals
yeah, the psychedelic,
within the
medicinal
mushrooms that can
psychedelics. Yeah.
be used. Because I have a good friend. She's a
Mm-hmm.
Republican, and she's
Yep.
very active in the Republican Party. Her name is Ashley. I can't forget her. I forgot her last name. Begins with
No
a
worries.
T. But she is super knowledgeable about that, and she
Okay.
talks about microdosing and how it can help people if done properly. And she's kind of given me some new thoughts about it too, because I also had heard previously that some of the benefits, especially for like our soldiers and that who maybe have PTSD, to help them work through some of these things
Mm-hmm.
under the care of a psychologist
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
and so but she had some interesting thoughts with me on that when you are on this it kind of can make you very susceptible, so if you have the wrong psychologist they can almost brainwash you.
Wow.
So I don't know. That maybe that's a conspiracy. I believe. I
Yeah.
don't know,
Could,
but
yeah.
but I trust her, and she's very. You should have her on your show. I'll give you her
Yeah. Yeah. If
contact.
you give me your contact later when we
She
message,
is
it'd be great.
super knowledgeable about this.
Awesome. We'd love
And
to have
so
her.
she actually helped me understand that. I remember a few years ago, it was on the ballot for Denver to basically legalize mushrooms or decriminalize mushrooms. That basically our legislation then went and changed all that. They like recriminalized it after we decriminalized it, and I didn't even know that happened.
Yeah.
But she is kind of working with that, and so I'm not against that. I actually used to have a very libertarian view of drugs, and that I thought they should just all be legal and just
Yeah.
regulated by the government because the war on drugs is worse than the actual drug problem itself.
Yeah. Yeah. The
Um,
mass
I've
incarceration.
since then kind of changed my mind a little about that. Do you know who Michael Schellenberger is?
Yeah, I've heard of him. I'm not super familiar though.
He wrote a
He's an
book
author,
called
right?
San Francisco, and
Okay.
he's not right wing. He's not Republican.
Mm-hmm.
He actually is probably more libertarian, and he used to be a little more left leaning. But I think he's one of those individuals where you start to question things, and then the and I hate right and left like division two, but anyway, I'm going to do it. The people on the left seem to sometimes push people over to the right, where you start to question things and they start attacking you. You end up getting shoved over. But anyway, he's
Yeah.
kind of like that in that he's really more of a centrist type person. But he wrote a book called San Francisco, which
Yep.
I highly recommend everyone read. And I think every especially our mayors, city council people, if you're serving at that local level, you
Yeah.
need to read this book because he talked about how the difference between legalizing everything and decriminalizing um,
Mm-hmm.
things. And he goes into what Portugal did. And I think what Portugal did, which I couldn't give you a great explanation off the top of my head right
Yeah.
now, but in reading what Portugal did is they didn't legalize drugs. They
Mm-hmm.
decriminalize drugs. And even though that sounds the same, there is a difference because you still can't like do drugs in public. They still um keep it so that drugs are kind of looked down as a moral evil in society, so they're not like putting them on a platform or anything. And how what Portugal did to solve their drug issues was actually very effective. And so I'm not against, look say go. We're looking at the federal level. You look at marijuana.
Yeah.
I do think that there are certain things that maybe leave it up to the states, or I'm not opposed to decriminalizing certain drugs at that level. Like I said, I would want to get more information and look at these things a little more in depth, but I do still kind of believe that thing that you look at the drug, the war on drugs, and especially now with fentanyl being laced on drugs, if people
it's terrible.
Knew that this is coming from more of a trusted source where they're not lacing your drugs with stuff, would that prevent deaths? So I hope I answered your question.
No, that did. All right, so I got like one more pretty much topic I want to cover around the environment. And looking, fracking is probably the biggest, unsustainable thing we might do in Colorado. It's been a pretty contentious issue, but the economic benefits are great. So with the need to connect, our beautiful natural landscapes and our water and air quality here, how do you balance those economic benefits of fracking with protecting our natural resources in our parks?
So looking at the environment and that, I think that's one issue that Republicans have done a very bad job of addressing, because a lot of them just like to spout one thing out and rather than actually talk about the topic. So I do think climate change is real. It is happening. I do not think that we're all going to be dead in 12 years, though, because of it. I think that we do need to keep the environment clean. Obviously, clean water and air are vital to us as creatures and organisms. Without that, we will die. So we do need that. I think, though, when trying to combat climate change or whatever, like to save the environment, the solution that most politicians put forth is give them power and give them money. And I don't see that as a solution to these problems. I do think that it is something that can be solved partially by the free market, in that I think most people want clean energy. We want electric cars that work well. We want windmills that are going to produce quality energy. We want different ways of having energy. And to do that, you kind of have to let innovation take its place. And in some ways, when the government subsidizes things, they get rid of the incentive to make that better. For instance, with windmills, if the windmill companies know that the government's just going to buy our windmills, they have no incentive to make better windmills. And we've had the same windmills for forever. Like I've heard in like Europe, they have some of those windmills that kind of, instead of being big blades like a fan, they're like turbines that spin round and round. So they don't kill birds, and they're more effective. We don't have that because the government subsidizes the old ones, and so there's no need for them to make better ones. So I think the government getting out of the picture will help. And even like when it comes to oil, right now, like we can't get rid of oil. It's there. We have to use it right now, but if these companies start working towards methods of better energy, down the road, we'll get there. But the government forcing them to stop or forcing things to happen, I don't think helps. And when it comes to fracking, like I've heard multiple things about it. Like I have heard all the things telling us how bad it is and what it's doing to the environment. But then I've also heard things where like it actually is a safer way of getting oil than some other ways. I don't know. I need to do my research more into that. Going back to Michael Schellenberger, he wrote another book called Apocalypse Never, which is an excellent book. I've read it multiple times, because he kind of talks about, he kind of has the same viewpoint that, like, climate change is real, but we're not all going to die. And he said he wrote that book because one day his daughter, and I forget what age she was probably like a teenager, but her friends were over, and her friends were literally crying because they were so scared that we were all going to die from climate change. And he's like, this is terrible that we're scaring kids to this point when and he's someone who truly does believe in the environment, and he's been an activist. He's gone down to South America and Africa fighting for the environment. And he's like, yeah, we need to stop doing these things, but we're not all going to die in like 20 years if we don't stop right now. So scaring kids to death about this is not the answer to that either. So I know my answer's kind of been all over the place. I hope it made sense, but I do think like it is something that needs to be addressed, but I think it has to happen gradually.
Yeah.
And it needs to be motivated or pushed by kind of like allowing companies and individuals to innovate something better. Because it's going to make them money. Whoever comes up with like an electric car that's as good as our gas cars will be a rich person. And unfortunately, I know money sometimes can be an evil thing, but it motivates people. So we have to let innovation take its place and get us there because things are better now. I mean, there are a lot of statistics showing now things are getting better, and we never talk about that. I think there's more trees on the planet now than there has been. There are, we are working towards bettering the earth. It just we have to get there.
Totally.
In a natural way.
Yeah, my last question, and then I'll give you an opportunity for any final statements or where people can find you or donate to help your campaign. Did you see the video of Drake that came out over the Super Bowl or right before it?
I did not see that.
Oh, wow.
What did he do?
You'll have to look it up later.
What did he do?
It's him like touching himself naked. But he's got a pretty impressive member. Yeah.
Well, that's
nice. It went viral on Twitter. Yeah.
Was it like a private thing that just kind of blew up, or?
Yeah, I don't know if it was leaked on purpose or accident. It's hard to tell.
Yeah, that's kind of. I mean, I didn't see that, so I can't talk about that. But I think we are kind of entering a phase here that I find interesting in that, like, we live our lives being recorded all the time. Like, I always tell people, I'm so happy when I was a teenager, we did not have phones with cameras on them recording everything I did.
Yeah, totally.
Because all the stupid things I did and said would be recorded for forever. But now we live in a world where we're on camera all the time. And almost like you went back to like what happened with Bobert. I'm not defending that action, but someone like her needs to realize that you're on camera all the time.
You're a public
I have to know that now. Like, I'm not a super famous politician. Most people have no idea who I am, but I still never know. I could be walking around town and someone could record me do something and the end goes viral or whatever.
And that ruins your campaign.
Yeah, but I feel like we're in a world where that could happen to any of us. You would think that we as a culture would become more forgiving of people. Like, all right, that happened. Because a lot of times, like even, maybe Bobert's not the greatest example, but something like that, where someone does something like, you know what, that's not good, but can I really say I've never done that myself? Not specifically what she did. I've never given anyone a hand job in a theater, but when people say mean things or they do something stupid, I'm like, you know what, like, have I never done that? But I feel like as a culture, we're not doing that. We're like almost getting more critical of people rather than more forgiving of people. And I find that odd because we all live our lives surrounded by cameras all the time. You would think we would be more forgiving of people. So like, I don't know what Drake did. but
that's fair.
But like when leaked videos like that come out, it's like, am I gonna like really be mad at him or her for this? Or am I say, you know what,
thanks, Valdemar.
Things happen.
Yeah. Do you have any last words for us or where people can find you? Best place to donate for your campaign if they want to help support you?
Yes, go to archuletaforcolorado.com, and it's all spelled out ARCHULETAFORCOLORADO. I think I
Great.
spelled Colorado correct. .com.
Like, you
Oh, good.
send me the link. I'll put it in the bio too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so go there. It also has ways you can go to on social media. I'm on most things, on all the big ones, on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. I'm on Truth Social. I'm on, what's the new Facebook one? The Threads. On Threads, at Archuleta4CO, and it's the letter or number 4. Archuleta, the number 4CO.
Great.
And so you can find me on social media. So definitely follow my account, even if you disagree with me. Anyone out there, I'm not the type who's just going to block everyone. Or I always think that's weird. On like Twitter, where people will post something and they disable comments. Like, what are you afraid of? Like, let people. I feel like even if I get a lot of negative comments, there's still comments that count towards my overall, algorithm to push me up. So say whatever you want. It'll help me in the end.
Great. Well, thanks so much
for
coming
follow me
on.
there.
Maybe when we get closer to the general election, we could talk again.
Yeah, definitely. I would love to come speak to you and the Wall Street.
The WSB, you can call him too. If you don't want curse, that's fine.
I was about to say, I was like, wait, is that really his name? Should I say, or am I about to insult him?
No, that's his name. I'm going to play an outro song called Ohio by a local artist named Pickle Walks.
Oh, nice.
And then I'll stop the recording, and you might just have to leave the app on your phone for it to finish downloading. But thank you so much, Valdemar, and have a great Wednesday afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, goodbye.
Bye.